Today, we will be talking about regeneration in a holistic way and also regenerative system change, what this means and what needs to be done. And for this event, we have very special guests. Daniel Christian Wahl, one of the catalysts of the rising regeneration and the author of Designing Regenerative Cultures, so far translated into 7 languages. He works as a consultant, educator, and activist with NGOs, businesses, governments, and global change agents. He is the winner of the 2021 RCI Bicentenary Medal for an outstanding and demonstrable contribution through design practice towards an equitable and regenerative world. Welcome, Daniel. And Daniel Pinchbeck is with us. Daniel is a New York Times best-selling author and entrepreneur. His books include Breaking Open the Head, 2012, The Return of Quetzalcoatl, How Soon Is Now, and When Plants Dream. So welcome, Daniel. Thank you both for joining us today. And this is Pelin speaking. Let me introduce myself briefly. I have been in business life for 19 years, managing international teams in corporate setting. Then I decided to put my white-collar career aside and follow my heart, which brought me to RegenerateX. I have previously held marketing positions at industry giants like Arçelik and Turkcell, and now I have a portfolio career where I have the privilege to choose the projects that I feel connected to. And these projects include the community management of a global diversity NGO, European Women on Boards, an international marketing role at London-based event tech company Craftsol, and above all, RegenerateX. And here, as a project partner, I help design life-changing experiences and transformative leadership journeys. And today, besides our guest speakers, I am here with my colleagues and dear friends, Jonaya and Rudy, and as always, our Heartmaster partners, Semin Yalman Yılmaz, founder at Living in the Heart, and Marv Radio, musician and voice coach, who will together share their gifts of meditation and music. Because in Regeneration, we believe in holistic experiences. So during our conversation, I know you will have a lot of questions. So I ask you to write those questions in chat, and we will relay those questions to our speakers at the Q&A portion of this event. And now, I'm happy to present my dear friends and business partner, Jonay and Rudy. Jonay Atalay is a consciousness business designer, cultural innovation strategist, a facilitator, and a leadership mentor. She is a keynote speaker and founder of the Heroines platform and co-founder of RegenerateX. And Rudy. Rudy is a keynote speaker on regenerative innovation. He is the founder of Unconditional Man and co-founder of RegenerateX. He guides, connects, and inspires leaders and entrepreneurs to co-create the emerging regenerative paradigm. So a very exciting conversation awaits, so please make sure that you are actively in the conversation and at the moment. Regeneration, after all, is all about the conversation, not a lecture. So, Jonay and Rudy, the stage is yours now.
Hello, thank you so much, Pelin. Hello, everyone. It's great to see some faces, our friends from all around the world, also the new ones. I'm Jonaya Atalay, and I'm here with Rudy Devale, my partner in business and life, and we are RegenerateX together today hosting this awesome, very exciting topic with some of our favorite people in this domain. So when we are talking about the regenerative systems change, it is important that we are talking about a living system. So not the mechanical way of thinking and shifting from one state to another, but also a process, an emergent space as humanity, which we are participating, actively observing, and also making conscious decisions about how we are participating in this whole life of this planet Earth as nature itself. So today I'm super excited. We have some amazing conversations, questions, curious questions to be asked. And as Pelin said, I invite you to actively participate with your questions, and we can see your questions, and we will be answering them in around 45 minutes with our guest speakers. Rudy?
Yes, good afternoon. So, systemic change is a big topic, right? So, we see a lot of things changing around us, like constantly evolving. And so, why do we want to change things is the first inquiry, right? So, why do we really need to change things? Because we see a lot of polarization, and the polarization is also maybe looking at things from a lack of. So, do we ask questions from a lack of, or do we ask questions from knowing that we are complete, we are abundant in an abundant world? So there's so many different areas we can tackle on this, from geopolitical, economical, financial, social, even cultural. So with our two guests, we're going to start a lovely conversation. And yeah, I think I'll get right to the questions.
Wait.
Right? Yeah.
Before we get to the questions,
right. Okay, I'm
and
too
go
excited.
mental, as we always do, let's first get in our bodies, because we believe one of the most important things, the shifts we need to make, is that go beyond the silo thinking, but bring our whole selves together with our bodies and really connect in the heart. And for that, who else we can think of but Semih Yalman Yilmaz, who is the founder of Living in the Heart and has been leading, teaching, and facilitating sessions together with us, also in the upcoming Heart Masters, about how we can transform to become heart-led leaders. Semih, welcome.
Well, good night, everybody. So, because it's night here, so it's not afternoon, but I'm so happy to be here. And also, I'm very excited because we are all going to meet in Ibiza. So, I'm looking forward to it. So, I will start some things before we go into our meditation, into our hearts. I will start with this. I believe regeneration starts within. So every day I'm repeating a mantra, which is Sa, Ta, Na, Ma. Sa means infinite, Ta means life, existence, and Na means death, and Ma means regeneration. So every day I invite myself to this awareness. There's a field of connection and possibilities, and with each breath I feel alive and I exist, and I'm grateful for this. I'm also aware there is death, but there is also regeneration. So when I look into nature, there is regeneration. So spring is here in Turkey. So when I look into my garden, I see the buds of the plants, and it gives me excitement and aliveness. So it's more than a concept. It exists, it's alive. So especially in these turbulent times, when there's so much uncertainty, we can lose hope. So I believe we need to reconnect with our body, with our mind, with our heart, with our soul. So we need this alignment more than ever. Maybe you see these turbulent times, and when there is so much uncertainty, and when we lose all this hope, maybe you think it's selfish and to connect with yourself, or maybe you don't have time for this. But how can you serve others if you're not in alignment with yourself and the universe? So I have a vision for myself and for the society, which is living in the heart. So what if we have this alignment with our body, with our heart, with our mind, and with our soul? And especially after the earthquake in Turkey, I once again realized how important this is to have this alignment. And I was listening to news and about what might be happening in near future, and I got stressed and very fearful, and it was not serving me, and I was blocking my daily actions. So every day I invited myself to my heart space. I dared to connect with my heart, and I aligned my head, my heart. And so I put my focus on the now. And So I ask the question, what is happening now? How do I feel? How can I accept my sensations, my feelings, without trying to change them? And how can I be kind to myself? So, what about starting first with serving yourself? So, how can I first serve myself? So, I invite you all to put your hands on your heart. So, let's start with this. So, if you want, you can close your eyes and you can just look towards your heart. Or if that is too much for you, closing your eyes, you can just put your gaze, lower your gaze towards your heart, and you can just concentrate on your heart. Just feel and listen to your heart. Maybe you feel your beating heart. It's alive. And without changing anything, can you allow yourself to sit what is present now? And if there's any sensations that you don't like uncomfortable feelings, without trying to change or pushing them away, can you allow to feel unconditionally? Feeling your heart without trying to fix, solve, or analyze. Remember, the heart need is to be seen, heard, listened, and felt. So can you invite acceptance, compassion, and kindness to your heart space? So what can I do right now to contribute to a better humanity starting within? Starting with something little. So how can I act in this present moment? So I'm leaving you with these questions, with this inquiry, and I'm passing it to our lovely speakers who are going to talk about regeneration more, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you so much, Semin. I think our hearts have a lot to say. So I suggest we start talking to our guest speakers now with this beautiful initiation by Semin. Welcome, Daniels. I would like to see you on the screen together. So I think it would be fair to say when we are directing the questions to Daniel Pinchbeck, we will say Pinchbeck, and Daniel Christian Wahl, we will say Christian Wahl. But honestly, it's such a pleasure to be with both of you, amazing, inspirational people in our lives, for our communities, also inspirational to our services in RegenerateX. Thank you so much for coming today and being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So yeah, welcome, guys. You both wrote pretty influential books. Daniel Christian Wahl wrote Designing Regenerative Cultures in 2016, I think.
50.
Yeah, and Daniel Pinchbeck wrote How Soon Is Now in 2017 or early 2017, so with a similar period. So I wanted to start with a question of like, what has changed since then? This is now 6-7 years ago. What has changed in you, how you see the world, how you see humanity, and the systems changing? So, or how do you see yourself expressed through these systems? So what is changing? What is going on? Maybe we start with Christian Wahl first.
Well, first to say that in my book, I actually quote a PDF and webpage that Daniel Pinchbeck produced in, I think, 2015, while I was still working on the book, which I think was called Towards a Regenerative Society. You can tell us a bit more about that afterwards. So there's been a connection. We almost met once, and then it never came together. So it's lovely to finally meet you online, Daniel. What has changed? Well, related to this topic of regenerative systems change, which can be so kind of male and engineering and forecasting and road mapping and blueprinting and all that kind of stuff comes up when people talk about systems change. What I'm actually much more interested in at the moment is to pay attention to the flip side of us being fundamentally interconnected with this larger dynamic context from which we emerge, which is that it's not just that we are change agents and we change the system, leaders of a new way of doing things. The system is changing, and it's changing us, each and every one of us. And I'm kind of currently paying more attention to how does change in the world show up in me, and how do I get out of the way enough to let life's regenerative impulse, which I more fundamentally than maybe when I wrote the book, I didn't put it as clearly, believe is life's regenerative impulse is what drives evolution. It's the what Sata Na Ma refers to the same cycle of death, rebirth, regeneration, and evolution. And so how do we listen really deeply through all our ways of knowing to the information that we have at our fingertips, because we are the system, through natural intelligence, not AI, directly plugging into the wider context we come from, and try to let that regenerative impulse come through us. And it's a flip. It's what Rudy was referring to earlier, that rather than trying to solve all these problems out there, and we have converging problems clusters and wicked problems and blah, 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 and to come back to place and community and see how all around us there is life's regenerative impulse coming through people caring for local abandoned stray animals, or for a locally in danger of extinction species, or regenerating the local river, or whatever, caring for single moms. That's all an expression of us actually being capable. It's what Rudy was referring to with regard to there is such beauty and such amazing stuff going on all around us. And it's actually, we need to change the glasses and stop for a moment to focus on the crisis and the problem and the imminent civilizational collapse, and kind of go, oh, wow, when I get analog rather than digital, and I look in my community, there's some pretty amazing stuff going on. Anyway, that's partially, I have a little daughter, so my focus is very inward to land, community, and the analog real world at the moment. But I don't want to babble on. Daniel, what has changed for you?
Well, I appreciate your perspective, and thanks Rudy and Kene for setting this up. I mean, I would say that, and to a certain extent, I'm sort of on a sort of systems change level, more pessimistic, because I mean, we can see what's happening, on top of all the other issues we had back in like 2013 or whatever, when we were writing our books. We also now have sort of this geopolitical fragmentation. So we have these kind of dictatorial regimes kind of racing in one direction and separating off from the more democratic kind of efforts to construct societies. And that just, I think, compounds a lot of the problems we already had. But I think it's great to focus on. I'm a mystic, in a sense. Like, I sort of feel that life on Earth is an extraordinary, improbable, miracle, and a great, magic trick that some set of super sensible beings, like, concocted for their own, amusement or creative, efforts or whatever. So I guess in a way, what I sort of not really seeing kind of a straight path towards, the kind of things that we obviously need to do as a species, like, redesign our financial systems so that, they don't allow for these terrible externalities, and so that, the energy, goes into the things that should be done to allow for long-term continuity, rather than, perverse incentives that drive all the things that shouldn't be done, that get done constantly at bigger and bigger scale. Sort of not really seeing kind of a way for that to happen without some kind of magical intervention. I've sort of turned my attention more to magic and the psyche. Next month, I'm actually putting on an online course on the Western tradition from the Institute today, looking at people like Gurdjieff and Rudolf Steiner and Aleister Crowley, and going all the way back maybe to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and the Gospel of Thomas and so on. I think, like, in this sort of extreme circumstance that we find ourselves geopolitically, logically, with kind of the incredibly, powerful technocracy that's developing and so on, kind of looking into the psyche and kind of considering if there are powers that we haven't tapped yet, that maybe could be used for kind of planetary awakening or something, or some like we're it's looking like we need like a Hail Mary pass at this point. So I don't know if you guys know that football, it's an American football term, but so I'm looking for the Hail Mary pass, and if that doesn't happen, it's been great being here, and very lucky to have the life that I've had and all that stuff, but it's looking pretty crazy out there right now.
Thank you. Thanks to both of you. It's really refreshing to hear, as a daddy, Christian Wahl, how you are enjoying the moments, everyday moments, as miracles with your daughter. And I know how precious you are with her and the land. And I really get very inspired with your lifestyle. And Pinchbeck, being in US and initiating all these courses for this Hail Mary moments to bring that to many of us. I also appreciate your work and your newsletters very much. Also, like Semin shared, I'm too Turkish, and we had also interventions. Call it nature's intervention, call it, I don't know how universe works its ways. There are also awakenings like earthquakes, which rumbles you to hear and to connect back to your nature and what is really important for you. I also feel very lucky and grateful to be alive and to be able to talk about these topics. And as I say, as long as we breathe, there is hope and there is some responsibility with it. And with that, I want to ask you a very practical question. With everything going on and changing the glasses, maybe even the minds that we are looking at things and receiving them holistically as not just individual bodies, but in the sense that it's we receiving, reflecting, and transforming ourselves to be in harmony with the systems transformation of nature transforming us, allowing that. And there are also some of us in positions to make decisions by trying to comprehend in the interrelations of every change, from technology to societal change to ideologies, also how the planet is inviting us to change. And especially for those leaders or who feel the responsibility to make new decisions, actions in harmony with this transformation. How do you suggest, let's call them leaders for now, but you can use another terminology for sure. I myself looking for new ways to describe that, but people who feel that responsibility, how do you suggest they start or navigate their ways to understand this infinite expansion of consciousness transformation while they have to make decisions for finite timelines or finite environments?
Who wants to go? Daniel, do you want to go first?
Why don't you go ahead?
How do we make decisions in the face of uncertainty? I mean, first of all, we actually need to acknowledge that in this complex nested system that we emerge from, there's so many nested systems dynamics that all have interacting variables. And we now know mathematically through complexity theory that these systems are fundamentally unpredictable and uncontrollable. They're intelligible because they follow rough patterns and they can move from one attractor into another attractor and shift the pattern. And we can understand those phase shifts, but we can't really predict them. And that means how do we act when we know that because we're part of that system, all our actions and our inactions, whatever we do, will change the future, which makes us incredibly powerful in the sense that what we do actually does matter, but at the same time, it makes us really humble because we don't know how to act correctly. And we've actually had ways of navigating that uncertainty for the long journey of our species' regenerative history. And we've lost those ways. And I mean, Daniel was referring to, in his course that he's offering, he was referring to Gurdjieff. Just a brief digression. One of Gurdjieff's students was J.G. Bennett. And J.G. Bennett was a very strong influence on Charles Crone and then Carol Sanford working with Charles Crone. And so basically the Regenesis group, Carol Sanford lineage of regenerative development has a lot of the thinking tools that come from Gurdjieff and Bennett. Looking at, for example, the instead of the thesis antithesis of the modern Western argument, looking at things more in the terms of the activating force and the restraining force, and what is the potential, the third force that can come from that. And so coming back to the leaders, I think we need to all really understand our places again in this modern globalized world. And I think the Hail Mary pass that Daniel was referring to is possibly the breakdown of the technological system and the supply lines to the point that through more and more disruption for many reasons, we will be experiencing what it means to be dependent for basic human needs on our region again. And we can avoid the trauma of that being through trauma if we start the process of radical re-regionalization of production and consumption and our way of being everywhere. That's like, to solve the global problem, we all have to get on with solving our problems. These problems, they do show up in the places we live in. And we have to work in global solidarity that people in all places can start this relocalization with a local mindset, like understanding that this is not a radical going back to cottage industries, but to understand that it's a nuanced experimentation over time. How much can we produce in this region for this region? And what are the things we still need, the key technologies that enable us to live well in these places with mainly local regenerative resource cycles? And yes, politically, that it's a long journey, and we're going, as Daniel said, we're going back to the power blocks and the kind of demonization of the other that we had in the last century. and the spin is existent on both sides. And despite of that, I think that, just again, changing glasses, there are people everywhere, and there are movements that are 40, 50 years old that are understanding this localization impulse. And more bioregional regeneration initiatives are spreading around the globe. And I think that's the sort of what E.F. Schumacher said: we cannot raise the winds, but we can set the sails, so when the wind comes, we're ready. And I love that quote, because to some extent, the winds are clearly on the horizon. They've battered us already a number of times, but we need to get ready to set the sails in a way that we can ride the dragon's tail. And I was quite depressed about it for the last year and a half. I've only really turned the perspectives turn of being more positive in the last 10, 15 days. So I feel with Daniel of kind of saying, it looks pretty grim. Like, it looked much more positive in 2016 than it does now. But I still see the silver lining. I see it again, which is wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say that, I mean, it's a complicated question for me, because when you say leaders, I mean, a lot of people in different industries, or they're doing like their tech stuff, or whatever, they're still ultimately kind of one of the beast in a way. That's and if you try to kind of dedicate yourself to trying to work for systemic change in some way or other, it's extremely difficult, and there isn't the type of financial remuneration that allows people to support their families and take their kids to Gstaad for skiing trips usually, and stuff like that. Usually all that stuff comes from doing things that aren't so good for the world on some level. That can always shift. I mean, I guess years ago I had a company called Evolver. We created a network of local groups called the Evolver Network. We had like 60 or 70 local groups, and we were trying to create a model for exactly what Daniel was talking about, kind of local, global, local. So you have a template for local communities to begin to meet up regularly and share, because there's a sort of lack of information, there's a lack of community. People kind of vaguely know things are wrong, but they don't really know things are wrong. I mean, I still think there is the possibility for exponential scalability if somebody could crack the right code. I mean, I was just watching the TikTok hearings this morning. I mean, 1 billion people on TikTok, 2/3 of American kids spending 90 minutes a day on TikTok, and something like 6 hours a day on social media. It's just crazy. But I mean, if somebody, it seems once again it's a Hail Mary pass, but if there was a way to kind of build a kind of network infrastructure that supported people in moving towards regenerative and transformational practices, that made it seem incredibly fun, like a giant LARP, a live action role-playing game, where you got to have more ecstatic dance and more barefoot time in the woods. Actually, it suddenly seemed like a lot better than following QAnon or doing whatever else you're doing. Then I think there could be a possible kind of a Hail Mary pass. But yeah, at the moment you have a problem, because the media is a giant kind of indoctrination, mind control system for the capitalist enterprise. I mean, it's very interesting living in New York right now, because it feels confused. There's like a sort of sense that the momentum of the old system has been disrupted, and now we're just seeing like higher and higher prices for basic goods, and less and less, I don't know, there isn't this sort of idealism of material progress anymore. Seems to have dissipated, and there's a sort of subliminal awareness that the system is morphing, and that the types of kind of ways that things used to go, in terms of like career paths and financial security and all that stuff, is beginning to sort of dissolve, but nobody knows what comes next. So periods of uncertainty like that are really interesting for potentially having a new model, some disruptive alternative model. But that also would take capital. So I guess in terms of your leaders, you would have to, like, I mean, what I always wanted to see, or what I've always suggested, there's this book called Dark Money by Jane Mayer, which looks at how the Koch brothers engineered kind of a transformation of American society over like a half century or since the 60s. But it was really very well planned out. Like they thought about, they had billions of dollars, they can experiment with, trying different tactics, disinformation tactics, buying think tanks, academic departments, starting, astroturfed social movements that looked like the green and ecological, kind of progressive movements like the Tea Party in the US, but in a way, that whole idea of bringing people together who have capital and resources, getting them to have a coherent vision of the types of changes that would help support our human family and going through the catastrophic birth and regeneration process, and then actually creating a strategic and
Whoopa.
He's jumping. Okay, so we lost Daniel for a moment there. He will log in again. So then, Daniel Christian Wahl, actually, one of the next questions is like, because we are in Ibiza, you're in Mallorca, we live in a tremendously beautiful, nature. And so I think, there's a lot of regenerative ideas and entrepreneurs that are coming here, same in Mallorca. And sorry, Daniel, that we lost you there. Did you want to finish your sentence?
I think you got me almost to like the last, few syllables.
Yeah, I think just about that. Yeah. So the next thought is about, because we are living in Ibiza and Daniel is also in Mallorca. You're in New York in a city, and we have a lot of these regenerative ideas, or actually people moving out of cities, going to the countryside, start to build their own eco communities and all that. And even local food systems, local distribution systems. And I found it amazing. I know that we can change a lot by just focusing on place, as Daniel Christian Wahl said, and community. Yeah. And this is happening in many places that we know around the world of different communities. So my question to both of you, but maybe Daniel Pinchbeck can start because you live in a city. So how can we bring these regenerative ideas to cities? Yeah, and or how is that actually alive, or these ideas alive? Because you've been now, you wrote about it, or you're also in this like 6, 7, or 8 years or longer. So what is still, is it still emerging? Is it something that was a trend and has left, or what is happening? And how can we also, how is regenerative system change or regeneration in cities, is that even a thing?
I mean, it definitely should be a big thing. I can't say. I mean, once again, I'm a little bit, maybe because I'm not, planting permaculture gardens in the forests of Ibiza or Mallorca, I'm a little more pessimistic. I don't really see, the type of, systemic change that needed to happen, many years ago happening. I mean, when I did my film, 2012 Time for Change, came out in 2010. We spoke to an aquaponics expert who was saying, if you had, rooftop gardens on every roof in New York, that you could grow 80% of the food that the city needs just like that, I do think that these things are, often kind of more complex. I mean, even in terms of the throughputs that permaculture takes, so it's nice to think that you can live in a sort of ecological paradise in Ibiza or something like that, but I don't even really buy that, because, for instance, Ibiza really doesn't have the water to sustain the type of population that's there now. So it's actually never going to be really very sustainable. But it looks good. I mean, it feels good to be in those types of communities, and everybody, feels great when they, come together and eat the local food or whatever. But I think cities are very crucial. That's where most of the people are going to continue to live, unless there's a gigantic die-off of the population, which is certainly conceivable. And I think that there should be, large-scale efforts to make cities more regenerative, but I don't see it happening here. I mean, maybe it's happening. I know, like Holland and Amsterdam, they're trying to apply Kate Raworth's circular donut economics model. But then I guess a pushback from its farmers don't want to make modifications based on, climate change. I mean, there's a lot of, it's just a very complex period, but somehow, from my perspective, this quote unquote regenerative movement, should be a lot further along. And I don't know why it somehow seems like, if anything, it got obstructed or kind of turned back,
So, well, just actually, before my book came out in 2015. A friend of mine, elder in the movement, I know him through the Global Eco Village Network, Herbert Girardet, wrote a book on regenerative cities. And he worked with the World Future Council on also a report, like if you put World Future Council Regenerative Cities PDF in the search engine, it probably pops up. And he did a lot of work with the city of Melbourne. There's quite a lot of interesting work being done in Australia. And then also interestingly, Regenesis Group, with their regenerative development approach, are actually focused on the built environment and working in kind of difficult situations where developers, local government, and community groups are at loggerhead. And through taking them into a regenerative process of a story of place and understanding place, they suddenly unlock these different points of view of what needs to happen here into a larger story. Very often something completely else gets developed. But for me, those are examples of regenerative urban development. My friend Jason Twill from Urban Apostles is pushing that in many different ways. He worked with Paul Allen in Seattle when they set up the Living Building Challenge, Living Building Institute, Living Futures Institute. So while all of those are still a little bit kind of like a lead system, have you followed all these things to make your building more regenerative? It's a start. And I just have to keep seeing the positive impulses rather than what's still not happening. And yeah, with regard to it's good to name these kind of slightly over-idealized sort of hippie fantasies of we're all living on permaculture farms and live happily ever after. But the reason why I moved to Mallorca, because you asked about Mallorca, is because it's an island that has about 1 million people population. When it's full of tourists, it has 2 million people's population. And from the resident community, about 480,000 live in the city, and the rest spread over the island. And it's in dimensions where both the city and the island actually make a really wonderful case study for bioregional development and how you could inhabit a territory that size regeneratively with 1 million people. Of course, the pressure that tourism adds to that is massively destructive, and we need to find a way to have less tourists and more long-term stays that bring the island into a balance again, because right now 80% of the economy is addicted to tourism or dependent on tourism, and when that crashes, we're going to have a lot of people leave because there won't be those jobs anymore. But in theory, we're slightly better off than Ibiza, because Daniel has a point with the water issue in Ibiza. We have mountains high enough that as we just did 3 weeks ago, people were skiing in the Tramontana. We had on Puigmayor 3 meters of snow, and that's water that trickles down slowly into the aquifer and gives us hope, at least at the moment, some more water in the summer. But there are also lots of places on Mallorca that are on drought alert at the end of the summer every year. So but that's precisely part of the regenerative movement, is now understanding that, for example, our carbon myopic focus on climate change is just playing into the pockets of people who just want to create another global casino on some sort of carbon credit trading bullshit. If we approached climate change through watershed management and restoring local water cycles, we can plant water, literally. If you increase the amount of trees in an area and initially water them, then once they establish, the trees themselves become the hydrological pump that actually creates enough moisture above the island that when moist clouds hit the island, they want to rain on the island and not get triggered by the island and then rain off sea, which is what they're doing right now. So if we bring on the islands the forest cover back, we will bring back the rain. And if we manage our water flows carefully, we can reduce so much of the water use and phase out the need for desalination plants and all that kind of stuff, which is highly energetically wasteful and so on. But now we're getting into a lot of techie detail. But the change is on all fronts. But to me, it's about falling in love with place again, falling in love with community again. Even if you find yourself in a pessimistic mode, which I have done, well, then you spend a year or two more on the spectrum of deep adaptation and shit's coming pretty soon. Let's put some solar panels on the roofs. Let's start planting some trees and have some basic self-reliance with regard to basic food items. But if you do it in a way of how can I do this and serve the local region and create local community, maybe work on community energy co-ops that are now putting solar panels all over Mallorca onto the roofs. I think we can also, with the money we spend to prep for what's coming, we can also feed the regenerative economy that is more locally and regionally based of the future. And it's going to be different in every place. But that's precisely what we have to work on. And people are, like, even in New York, I mean, I know a lot of people who are kind of upstate New York planning the multimillionaires, what they will do when the crash happens and how they will close off certain bridges to certain islands in order to have their little hideout. I think that's the wrong type of catastrophic prepping. But there are others who are supporting very strong regional food economies, and that's going to be a survival ticket for a lot of people. And we've got maybe 10, 15 years to be a lot more local and regional as a species than we are right now. Like the whole Elon Musk and Bezos-esque tech, fancy all that West Coast bullshit of exponential tech and all of that. It's simply not understanding basic physics. It's going to run out of steam, and it's great. It's good that it's going to run out of steam, because we don't want that kind of cyborg AI guided world that these people who are stuck in a mistaken narrative are envisioning as a future.
Mm-hmm. Aho, thank you so much to both of you. Right now, I remembered Daniel Christian a couple of years ago when we were having a conversation, and I started talking about my excitement about space technologies, and you asked me, but Janai, why? And then I was explaining, eventually we are going to be there because life on Earth won't be possible. And you asked me, but Janai, why do you think like that? What about life of Earth? Why don't you pay attention and then focus the life of this precious planet? And then that was a moment of recalibration and understanding and remembering I'm a seed of this planet and my life is here. My service shall be here. And as a mother of two, that really opens my heart to remember this is it. This is our beautiful Earth. And again, you reminded me of that conversation. It was a beautiful inspiration. I think many of the time we forget that technology, money systems, and everything is our creation. And we forget that it is us and our responsibility with love. You said falling in love, and we are emerging in love, how we can serve. And I see a lot of regenerative projects, beautiful young people coming to Ibiza, living here 12 months, creating these regenerative communities, sharing the land, the food, the practices with communities selflessly. And I can see in their faces and in their eyes, they are shining. And I believe it's less of convincing people about what they shall be do. This is right, this is wrong, but inspiring. This is life. It's a beautiful life. Because when you are in that love and you are with that presence, other people, regardless of their money situation or what political power they hold, you become inspirational. Most of the time when we are talking about regeneration, we say it is about creating life-affirming conditions. I believe we can do the same for each other, bringing each other some inspiration, keeping that relentless hope and faith with action, but by inviting, also opening our spaces like you are doing now, with all the world, sharing our knowledges, our dreams, our visions for many years. These are all services I believe are making the transition not just necessary, but also beautiful and joyous for many of us. So I want to appreciate both of you with that. Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanted to go a little bit deeper in the technology question and how can we like think about technology in a regenerative way. Yeah, so we know that the decentralized technologies, you know, they were very also hyped also in together with regeneration, and not like in the models of let's say the scaling. We need to scale everything big and big, but actually more in a distributive way, like that ideas and projects need to be passed on and distributed in a good way. But also we know that last year was a tremendous bad year for decentralized technologies, for the, you know, coins, the FTX, and there has been a lot of, like, let's say the greedy side of that technology, you know, like want it, or we want things and we want it fast, has basically collapsed. And so what is left? So out of the ashes, because we know a lot of people also have been victim of these crashes, and out of the ashes, do you see like decentralized technology still as a stable technology to move forward with these projects? And I want to ask this question especially to Daniel Pinchbeck, but I also would love to hear the view of Daniel Christian. Well, of course.
Yeah, it's definitely not looking very good for the whole crypto thing right now. If that's what you're referring to. I mean, it looks like there wasn't really much there. And essentially they've sort of like, we've been waiting for, you know, whatever the there is to emerge. And now it's been a number of years. And it looks more like, you know, often types of very complex Ponzi schemes where there isn't really much under the hood. Or anything really. I don't know. I mean, I'm still intrigued. I mean, I'm still intrigued by Ethereum. I've never really understood, you know, it solves any problem. I'm very suspicious of the sort of you know, tech libertarians like Srivanasan and Andreessen, who kind of you know, there's this book called The Sovereign Individual, which sort of like anticipates the idea that you know, traditional governments are going to break down and they're going to be substituted with something they talk about as commercialized sovereignty, which is basically ruled by corporate in some sense or other. Well, you'll break up the services of governments and no longer have them as public institutions, but have them as private institutions. I only see that as a recipe for, you know, a sort of corporatized serfdom. I don't see that as something that's going to be very positive. I mean, Balaji's also put out the concept of the network state. Intrigued by that, this idea that you could have kind of, you know, but it's not really that different than having virtual communities. But the idea is that these virtual communities would be able to make decisions together, be able to even have their own visas and passports. You know, that could go either way. That could be used for libertarian kind of self-interested type goals, or it could become something more cooperative, communal, and so on. In terms of Daniel Christian Wahl's point about, you know, technologies, I mean, yeah, I think that, you know, I mean, and this is kind of how I looked at it in the How Soon Is Now book. You know, there are distributed technologies that, you know, could have exponential scalability that would be of great benefit. Something like, you know, even biochar, gasifiers or something, or aquaponics units or composting units. You know, there's all sorts of stuff that everybody should be having right now, which still only a very small echelon of people have access to. So, and yeah, I mean, a lot of, if we were going to make an actual serious effort to avert like the worst consequences of what is of us, we would, you know, we'd have to think about, you know, technologies, advanced technologies, but utilize them almost from an indigenous perspective. So, for instance, like, you know, aquaculture, like the only feasible way that, as I've understood it, to reverse ocean acidification, which is why you guys are getting all the jellyfish and you know, Ibiza and so on, you know, would be massive kelp farming. If something 7% of the ocean kelp farms, which is a inconceivably vast amount, that would leach out the CO2 that is contributing to the disintegration of the coral reefs and all the other negative stuff. So, and then it would be potentially food or sustenance. There are possibilities along those lines where we could think about distributed technologies that could be scaled exponential. Another one would be training through the internet, whether it's permaculture principles or composting principles or all this stuff that at the moment is so volunteer that it's not even really done by many people. So yeah, I'm still interested in DAOs. I'm working on a DAO concept with a bunch of friends, more in the artist consciousness area, called Beyond. The website is www.beyond, BEW, with a 0 for the O, and then nd.us, US. So we're exploring the possibility of creating like an artists DAO where the artists do consciousness experiments together or investigations, and then the result of those experiments are in the form of NFTs. But yeah, I just don't know. So far, it's definitely looked like a mixed bag in terms of the distributed finance. I think also this idea of like decentralization needs to be challenged a little bit because coordination in complex systems often requires a combination of like decentralized and centralized kind of nodes, networks, and so on. So this kind of like idealization of total decentralization feels to me like another kind of fantasy that has that gives people kind of an illusion that there's like some in a way non-political hope. Part of if you read like the sovereign individual or a lot of libertarian thinking, it's this idea that we're going to have a world beyond politics, but I look at politics differently from like Hannah Arendt's perspective. She's an incredible political philosopher who wrote many books like on revolution and so on, The Promise of Politics. She talked about how like human nature is actually political, whereas like we come together, we make decisions together. It's actually something that done properly is part of our human essence. It's just that the systems and structures that have developed, over this last, evolutionary cycle are not like that. They're kind of very distant, representative. You could have something more like a direct democracy that blockchain could administer to the internet that would scale from the bioregional, local bioregional to planetary. That might help us break out of some of these log jams.
I would nuance that in the sense that of course we need to scale link the local regional into the global, and that's this notion of working locally with global awareness. But what's really important with this political dimension that Danny was referring to is the concept of subsidiarity, which actually is written into the European Constitution. But we found in a lot of the big democracies around the world that they veer towards centralized governments, where a lot of the decisions are made at the highest level of government, national or even international agreements. And if we design a radically subsidiary system, which means that people in the places where the decisions affect them make the decisions, and all higher levels of government have a subsidiary role to enabling people in their places and bioregions to coordinate, then we flip the whole thing around. And the danger of, well, Rudy's question, even with the way you worded it, is like, we need a conversation about which technologies are appropriate and decentralized technologies with regard to things like Marcin Jakubowski and the open source ecology and kind of all the new technologies that allow us to produce in much smaller circular economies at local and regional scale are very interesting there. But to mix that up with all these cryptocurrencies and digital technologies is blending two very different things. And the danger, and this is what I'm observing in a lot of really well-meaning, intelligent people, mainly from California and from the tech crowds, think that they're going to save one of humanity's big problems by creating these systems that allow everybody to vote on everything. But at the same time, we've seen with Trump coming to power and many elections now, how we use AI through Boston Analytics or Cambridge Analytics to manipulate the intention and opinion of large crowds. So by creating a supposedly all super democratic, everybody can vote and it's all traceable and it's all transparent and blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. Because we don't have the mental capacity to make informed decisions on everything. It's okay to have a series of water and ecosystems experts suggest a water management plan and communicate well to people how to follow that plan, and why it's necessary to follow, and maybe give them some options within an already established catalog. But if we end up creating these supposedly hyper-democratic systems where everybody can vote on everything, then it will just be played by the attention mechanisms of the social media, and we will actually open a backdoor to demagogues and dictatorial systems in the facade of ultra democracy. So I'd be careful with all of that. On YouTube, there's a wonderful conversation that I had in 2020 with Dennis Meadows, where he really kind of puts it pretty bluntly of that we simply have to now make decisions with an idea in mind, like what if in 20 years' time we would have only 30% of the technological capabilities we have now in terms of being able to apply them and like power that technology. Which technologies would we use and do we need power for, so they enable people in place to live meaningful human life and contribute to a larger meaningful whole? That's a whole different way of, in a nuanced way, understanding technologies, not demonizing them, saying, no, we need an ultra low-tech future and all become craftspeople again. We will become craftspeople again, and we will become farmers again. But we can do that in the cities too. But if we have now the conversation about what technologies would actually make life a lot better and easier, like, for example, this way of learning that we now can do through a platform like this, that's also critically important. Where's Daniel gone? The connection.
Daniel had to hop in a cab to another event, so he's going to join us as soon as he's in the cab. So,
Okay.
yeah, there was an article of Douglas Rushkoff today where he also exactly talks about that. And his question was like, are we trying to program people to behave better? Yeah, because now there's a new trend of like the humane technologies that trying to undo what we have coded wrongly. Yeah. Or are we creating better conditions for such positive change to take place? Right. So what is it that we are creating? Right. So, and for that, I believe also like what we are doing with in our work is basically to work on that awareness. Yeah. So how can we make people aware of like what it is to be human, you know? And I see also the technological changes that are happening, or a mirror for us actually to think like, what type of humanity can we create? What type of humanity can we dream? You know, we still have that capacity to dream, but if we are just continuously, you know, taken in that technology or in those streams, we forget that we have still, you know, like ability to decide for ourselves. Yeah,
it's the whole narrative that thinks that what has come out of the scientific and then the technological industrial revolution is progress. But we've created that narrative, and we, in that so-called progress, started calling indigenous regenerative cultures that have been there for 100,000 or longer years primitive cultures, and they didn't have anything to offer. If we understood that they carefully understood technologies in a much deeper way than we do today. I had a wonderful conversation on the RSA podcast, Regeneration Rising, with Professor Ann Paulina, who's an Aborigine elder in the Kimberleys. And when they are on country and two people meet, they ask the place for permission to use human language, as fallible as it may be, because it might serve the place and the larger whole. That understands that our language is fallible in and of itself and is a technology. Similarly, the way of counsel, of sitting in a circle with a talking stick and having a process to listen to each other from the heart and speak from the heart, is an ancient sacred technology that all indigenous people around the world have. And if the negative prediction about the light and shit really hits the fan, that capability is the last thing we actually have to say, and what now? All the technological solutions might get ripped under our feet, and we might find our life a bit like the people in Turkey, sitting in the rubble and saying, what now? And we need those deep ancient technologies of counsel, of vision quest, of Daniel can talk a lot about sacred plant medicine. That's also one path to understanding our connection to the larger whole we might relearn from indigenous people. So, and all of that is technology. And I mean, for 200 years, even in the Torah, the golem is a warning against, watch out, creating technologies that will make you the servant rather than serve you. Goethe's Dr. Faustus or Marlowe's Faust, same story. The Disney's Zauberlehrling is a copy of Goethe. It's all about paying attention to what technologies actually serve us, from the written word to the spoken word to the printing press. They all have shadow sides, and we need to be aware of them.
Oh, thank you, Daniel. The emphasis on the silence, asking for permission from the land, all these living beings which have been before us and gave birth to us, and humbly accepting our position in service. I totally resonate with so many things that you share in my heart. It vibrates here. And I was in a design thinking consultancy, and I was involved designing so many digital services, from their business models to experiences, where our success metrics and innovation was all about how many users, for how long, with what frequency they are using our services, and that was success. And we didn't really look at what mindlessly we were leaving behind. And with that silence, how we greet each other and how we allow each other to be, accepting all of ourselves with our emotions, not just a repetition of thoughts in a fast order to take the stage, take the attention. And this is what sometimes we do as humans, but then we reflect it to our services. And this is how also the media works. But just changing the way we listen to each other, using human technologies, natural technologies, or digital technologies. But I have total hope and faith, and this is how I also dedicate my life to the service of bringing this really beautiful, precious rituals and algorithms to my life and to everywhere that I serve. And I'm so happy also with RegenerateX that these are the conversations and designs that we are very committed to bring to whatever power we have, to wherever we can bring. So thank you for sharing this very precious guidance and light with us. I deeply appreciate. And I'm so looking forward to being together in Ibiza with two Daniels and having fireside chats and talking more about the evolution of our language and regenerative conversations. I'm so excited.
Much longer.
Pinchbeck, And I would love to get your hands in the soil and plant some tomato seeds together.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Daniel, how long are you coming to Ibiza for?
I haven't worked that out.
Oh.
I mean, yeah. I mean, and I'll catch the your event.
There are no direct flight. You know, there are no direct flights from New York to Mallorca, so you might want to check that out.
Okay, but I think I'll probably be in Europe before that.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I liked what Mr. Daniel Christian Wahl was just talking about. But obviously it's a huge thing to think about 30% energy, 30% technological capacity in 10 or 20 years. It is hard for me not to think that leads to massive crunch of the human population. And yeah, I think one's perspective is different if you're living in a beautiful place like Mallorca or Ibiza and having that experience, if you're seeing how people live day by day on Avenue C in New York City. Yeah, it just seems like if it tailspins like that, the loss of life on a planetary scale will be just traumatic. And also, as we've seen this geopolitical division happening, it could also easily spiral into wars and into nuclear conflicts. I mean, I guess what I was hoping when I wrote the How Soon Is Now book was that we would see the Western elites, moving almost into like a Christ-like sense of kind of like service and responsibility, reducing, their kind of modeling like a new kind of archetype of planetary service as one of the only ways for us to inspire the world to follow that type of example. That clearly has not happened in any way, shape, or form. So the West has really forfeited a lot of its moral authority on any level, and that's also quite unfortunate. But who knows? Maybe things will shift in a different. There is that possibility of exponential communication, and so on. So yeah. Nice to be part of this forum and great to see you guys. I look forward to hanging out in Ibiza.
Yes, we are going to be together on the 27th of May in Ibiza with the Heart Masters. And on the 31st of May, we have RegenerateX Ibiza conference, where we will be also meeting with the local regenerative servants and stewards. It's going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to it, especially the part we are going to put our hands in the soil and plant some seeds, Pinchbeck. So you won't say that I am not doing it anymore. That is the transformation we are going to make.
And we also have some interesting people joining. Adib Dada, who's joining from Beirut. He's a regenerative architect or regenerative city designer. And he literally brings back the forest into the cities. And we also have Ronnie Potel and Frans Almeijer from Haifa and Seeds, who are basically a really great bunch of people also to work with. So they are really, looking at technology in a very humane way and how we can create DHOs, as they call it, like decentralized human organization, putting the human back in the center of the technology creation and not like letting the automatization do everything. So it's going to be interesting. And we have a lot more people also. So, but you had a last question, Janai?
Yeah, I have one last question. I know you are connected to so many people, so many communities, and doing amazing things. You have this systems perspective for so many years. And my curiosity is looking at how we are going with your visions, with your dreams, with your strengths. Where personally are you committed to invest your upcoming years, your energy to make the best, the most regenerative out of it?
Daniel, do you want to go first? Oops, can't hear you. No, you're still.
Okay, there we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I have to admit, like, my biggest, interest in a way is art and creativity, and I ultimately see myself as an artist. And so, I'm hoping that I get to follow that kind of inspiration. I feel that I'm more of an urban bohemian type than a rural building the permaculture future of community of the future type. And I may end up going down with the ship. It's quite possible. I think I take that seriously as something that might very well happen. But yeah, I mean, I don't have any huge plan at this point to, I mean, I would love to make another stab at what I tried to do with the Evolver Network, because I felt that was the best model that I've seen, to be honest. I mean, it's a little bit like the transition town, which also, seems to have gotten sort of stalled at a certain point. But I mean, I think a kind of template for local communities to self-educate and actually to then immediately start to, create regenerative, or whatever you want to call them, projects, or even just have a deeper culture connection. But I mean, yeah, it's always stymied me in New York, how you do anything in New York City. So I think that's an interesting case study to be here. Not that I'll be here forever. You never know. So anyway, yeah, I don't have like some massive kind of game plan for the regenerative future. But I'd be curious to hear if anybody does.
I don't either, but I mean, just to echo the bit about artists and the creative industries, musicians, dancers, poets, we will not have a cultural change until our deep indigeneity to life itself as a planetary process is expressed through all pop, rock, hip hop, whatever takes your fancy, through new theater, through new dance. We can bring this reconnection to life as a force that is beyond us into our art. And in doing so, we can maybe create that perspective shift or consciousness shift that will actually give us peace with our mortality as a species. And somehow maybe the path through the eye of the needle is that when we really celebrate what we've got, even if it's driven by the fact that we see it disappearing in front of our eyes, maybe through that we find a path into preserving and truly loving it. Like, what comes to mind is the wonderful Rainer Maria Rilke poem that was written over 100 years ago, and I've quoted it a couple of times on podcasts and on talks. So I sort of hesitate to quote it again, but it's so powerful. It goes like this: "Dear darkening ground, you have endured so patiently the walls we've built. Maybe you'll give the cities one more hour, cloisters and churches too, and those who labor, maybe you let their work grip them for another 5 hours or 7, until that moment of inexplicable terror when you take back your name from all things and become water and widening wilderness again. Give me just a little more time. Give me just a little more time, so I may love the things until they're real and ripe and worthy of you." That's what I'm committed to love the things until they're real and ripe, to go into a regenerative future, even if it's without me, without my loved ones, or even without humanity. I trust in life's regenerative force in the universe, even beyond this planet. I'm not paranoid about comets hitting this planet and therefore having to go off planet and all that bullshit. Life will find a way. We probably came from off planet anyway. So, but that's another story that Daniel also has written about.
Thank you for blessing the earth, blessing the soil, blessing the water the way you did with love. I really appreciate. I love you, both of you. This poem is awesome and it touched me deeply. And thank you for also bringing your beautiful inspiration about music and art. Because the way we express ourselves with our indigeneity to this life is, of course, through voice. And I want to thank you both for participating so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Ibiza. And by the way, people, I know there have been a lot of things that has been shared. Don't worry. We are going to share the links and the books and all the references in a summary of this event later on our page. So I want to thank you and honor you and bless you with your beautiful guidance to all of us. And I want to invite
Yes, exactly. Oh,
our
they're gone. They're
marvelous Marv Radio. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Can we just get some light on here? Wonderful. It's an honor to be here and to hear this beautiful discourse and to, I had intended to share a lot of words, but I'm going to keep it very short because I want to lead a little bit of a sonic meditation. But it's amazing to see the full circle because in 2011, I watched Daniel Pinchbeck's documentary, 2012, A Time to Change, and it really brought me on the path of shamanism and finding the way of shamanism through voice. And to hear leaders of this regenerative movement speaking about the indigenous wisdom and the connection to the technologies we already have. For me, we have one clear technology that is super important in a cultural revolution, in something that can change and spark. And it really warmed my heart to hear the closing statements of both Daniels to mention about art and creativity and how the future of voice is for our voice to really be heard, for the indigenous voices to be heard, to the voices of the impoverished to be heard. And we have a bit of an issue in this world of certain voices being championed over others, especially sometimes some that carry a bit more of a dark or negative connotation with them, or a consumption culture. So really what my work is about is really reclaiming the voice as a powerful tool for expressing the future that we are already in. And I say that with the knowledge within myself that time is a little bit of an illusion, and we're already living within the age that we are birthed from and that future that we wish to see in this world. So my personal passion is working with voice and supporting leaders, coaches, creatives to use their voice in empowering ways, creative ways. And I am a musician and creative. So yeah, you can find out more at marvradio.com or at my Instagram at marvradio. But because this is short, I would like to lead a short visualization using some sounds that while I was listening to these beautiful words and this great discourse, I was using my voice to create this soundscape so that we can envision this world together. So I'll keep this as short as possible. 7 minutes, we can do it. I'm used to doing this over like 45 minutes to an hour, but I did just say time is a bit of an illusion. So let's fit all of that time into a small amount of time. If you do have headphones or a Bluetooth speaker, I recommend that because we're using high quality audio equipment for this. And just before I go into the meditation, we're going to close off.
Yeah, before going into the motivation, I just would like to thank to all our participants. So let me do this. So everybody, we all thank you, our dear speakers, our participants, greatly for joining us for this special session of RegenerateX. It is such a delight to meet with all of you. So this is the third of many events where experts, leaders, entrepreneurs, and regenerators from around the world will come together to discuss and explore the ways in which we can work towards a more regenerative future. So together, we will explore the ways in which we can work to regenerate our systems, communities, and ecosystems. So we will be continuing our LinkedIn live events bi-weekly. To give a snapshot, we will talk about regenerative city designs, regenerative communities, decentralized human organizations, and so on. So you can follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn to stay connected and in the know. You can also reach out to me directly if you are interested in joining us for the Heart Masters in Ibiza and Bodrum. So now I'm giving the stage to Marv again to gift us with a musical meditative outro. What a great way to end this event. Marv, thank you very much, and the stage is yours again.
Thank you. So hopefully that gave enough time for those of you who didn't have your headphones on to connect, and really make sure that no matter what situation you're in, whether you're in transit, you can really tune into yourself and into your breath. And I invite you to take slow, patient, deep breaths that can connect you to your heart space and feel the expansion as these sounds take you on a journey. And as you breathe, feel yourself connecting to the center that joins us all, the space of the heart. As you allow this expansion to occur within your system, truly focus on this vision of how we can transmit and transmute all of the fear in this moment, all of the concern of what could go wrong, and instead decide what our future looks like, a future that is limitless, a future.
Marv, we cannot hear you. Can you try again? We cannot hear you.
A future that is free from technical issues, where each being can carry out their dream, their true purpose, being supported by the ecosystem within and without, being held through the interconnected nature of all of our centers. And as you connect to this reality, start to envision what this world looks like, what it feels like to walk around in a world that truly serves each being, each ecosystem, each creature in full actualization, and what part you can play. The simple steps that you can take in order to be a pioneer in this regenerative world. Allow this vision to become clear, as though you're watching it on a giant cinema screen, and see through the eyes of a child how we can imprint regeneration, creativity, self-fulfillment, and unconditional love at every level of society, of industry, and of course, of nature. How we can learn the lessons of beautiful nature and all the wisdom that it holds, and become truly a part of this solution. first step and truly being willing to take it from a place of love, connection, and personal responsibility. May we all remember that we are just walking each other home. As you come back fully to your present moment and bring this energy into the rest of your day or evening, wherever you may be in the world. And as you come from this space with all of these new ideas, or maybe reinforcement of ideas that you already have, move with love, move with awareness and with consciousness that you are empowered and you are at the center of this regenerative change. Thank you very much for joining us at RegenerateX. I wish you a beautiful rest of your week.